So the last two properties we have are domain and range. So first up with domain, domain is our set of all our x values. So if we're looking on our graphs here, we want to go from left to right. What is our smallest point and then what is our highest point that we are going with? So if you notice, technically there are arrows right here. So it goes on and on forever all the way to the left and on forever all the way to the right. So it doesn't matter if you're going up or if you're going down, the domain, no matter what, it includes all real numbers. So the way we write that, it's negative infinity to positive infinity, and they don't have brackets because they are not included. So then we get to algebraically. Well, it's not much different. It really doesn't matter what your function is, it's always going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. So that should be something really easy to remember. Next up we have the range. So this works a little bit differently. Remember when we talk about range, it's all of our y values. So what is our lowest y value? So go all the way down as far as possible and then go all the way up as far as possible. If you can see, depending on whether or not you have a minimum or a maximum, the range is going to be slightly different. So if you have a minimum, you're going to start with your minimum y value and it's going to go all the way up to positive infinity. So what is that minimum y value? Well, it's just your y coordinate of your vertex. So in this case here, if my point is 0, 1, the y coordinate is 1. So it goes from 1, included, with brackets, to positive infinity. Over here, in this case, we are not going more positive than this negative 1 here. So you go all the way down as far as possible, which would be negative infinity, and it goes all the way up to a negative 1. So in this case, it switches. You always start with your lowest value, which is negative infinity, so we have a parentheses there, and then it goes up to negative 1, included with brackets. So you need to know whether or not it has a minimum or a maximum, and that will tell you how to do your range. So let's take a look at it algebraically. If we're not given a graph, you need to figure out what your vertex coordinate is. And what do you need from that vertex coordinate? You need your y value. So first up here, I want to know whether or not I have a minimum or a maximum. And that goes back to our leading coefficient test. My leading coefficient is a 1, a positive 1. So that means I have a minimum. It is opening up, it's concave up, it's smiling. I have a minimum. So I know that if I were going to graph it, I'm going to start at that y value, and then I'm going to go all the way up to positive infinity. So this is the same example from earlier when we had to find the vertex. So I plug in the negative b over 2a equation. I know that my x value is negative 1, and then I go ahead and plug in negative 1 to solve for y. So my y value is negative 1. So that is my lowest point here. So it's included at negative 9, and then it goes all the way up to positive infinity. Over here, my leading coefficient is negative, so that means I'm going down, down. I'm concave down, and I have a maximum. So this time, because I'm going down forever and ever, I'm going to start at negative infinity, and it's going to work its way up to a positive 23 that is included as my y coordinate of my vertex. So last but not least, we just want to put together all the different characteristics that we're talking about, because you're going to go ahead now and fill out a characteristics chart that asks you for the vertex, that asks you for the axis of symmetry. How is it opening, up or down? What's the domain and the range? So we just want to kind of put it all together to make sure that we're all on the same page. So first up, our vertex is negative 1, 4, which is right here. Then we know that the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1, because that line has to go right through that x coordinate. We know that this graph is opening down, so it's concave down and it has a maximum value. We know that it crosses the y-axis at 0, 3. We know that there are two x-intercepts because one is at negative 3, 0 and the other one is at 1, 0. And then last but not least, we talk about the domain and the range. No matter what, domain is always negative infinity to positive infinity, and our range is negative infinity as our lowest point, and it goes all the way up to our y-coordinate of our vertex, or positive 4 with a bracket. So that is putting all of our characteristics together now.